Good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Good morning, Bante. With Bante's permission, I shall commence this morning's sharing. Before I begin, I must first wish all of you, those who find today a significant day, then a very Merry Christmas and wish your family well. May you find wellness, comfort, peace, and happiness. This morning's topic is very appropriate for today's occasion, being Christmas Day. I was also communicating with Bante and also a few other well-learned monks and found out more about what I should present today on this very special day for the Christians. But as it turned out, originally I wanted to present talking about the middle way. Then I gave it some thought and realized that it is more important to talk about the beginning of the 4 Brahma Viharas, and that is Metta. So apologize for changing the topic slightly. Instead of middle way, we are going to look into Metta. Right? I made the topic title as Joy in the World, instead of Joy to the World. Some of you may realize why. Because when you think of joy to the world, there is a separation between you and the world. We are all in the world. So it's joy in the world to bring joy from within us, and it can spread around us. And that is really what is meant by joy in the world. And that is in fact the essence of Metta, to bring kindness from within us, our aspirations to be kind to one another. And from that state of kind-heartedness and kind-mindedness, which I think some of you may know that Ajahn Brahm calls it kindfulness, that can then begin to spread from within us to around us. And that is why I call this joy in the world. It is the world that we are interacting in. Let us begin with the root teaching of the Buddha from the very beginning. The first thing that the Buddha spoke about, he used the word dukkha. Now, unfortunately, the word dukkha has been translated to this word suffering. But actually, it means so many other things, and not necessarily suffering as in, oh, I'm really very painful and I can't bear it anymore. Not necessarily to that level of suffering. It could also mean simple things like stress, distress, dissatisfactoriness with our environment. So there are a whole lot of little things that actually can lead us to this suffering. But if we can right above that and realize that it is possible to find joy from within us, to be able to spread this good feeling from within us, then we are beginning to practice what is called metta, the bringing forth from what is inside us. Because metta is not something that is a commodity you give to someone. You don't do that. You radiate from deep within your heart, and you radiate with conscious awareness, conscious mindfulness. And that is really the essence of metta. Now, to bring us back to the beginning of the Buddha's teaching, actually when the Buddha first became enlightened, after he meditated under the Bodhi tree, he got together with the 5 ascetic friends. And many people thought, he first started talking about the 4 Noble Truths. Oh yes, the 4 Noble Truths was the important teaching inside the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. But the very first thing the Buddha spoke about actually is the middle way. So what exactly is the middle way? The middle way is what the Buddha was trying to warn us against falling into these 2 extremities. There are 2 extremities to be avoided. The first extremity is this sensual pleasures indulgence as well as reacting to emotions. So when I say sensual pleasure indulgence, I don't necessarily mean only things that make you sensually happy, but also things that make you sensually unhappy, dukkha. So basically it's reacting to an emotional excitement within us. Because when we feel emotionally excited from what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, there can be 2 kinds of reaction, right? The first is we react to it by indulging in it or by interacting with it. If it is something we don't like, we find it very very fearful and angry towards it, and eventually this anger could turn into hatred. If it is something we enjoy, pleasurable, we want more of it, and sooner or later this pleasurable enjoyment turns into some kind of addiction, and we cannot have enough. So we want more, and it turns into greed and lust. So this is the first thing that the Buddha wants us to avoid, first extremity, and that is reacting to emotional excitement, whether it is pleasurable excitement or it is unpleasant excitement. The other extreme, now some people will think, maybe then I should practice withholding. When I see something exciting, I just force myself not to react. And that is the other extreme the Buddha was warning us against. This condition called self-torment and self-mortification. That means we are forcing ourselves to withhold it. So in other words, when you find some emotional excitement from what you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, and then you force yourself and say, no, I'm not going to get involved. I'm going to hold myself. This forcing can also lead you to a lot of suffering. We know that because when we try to do that, it is suffering to us. It is painful for us to withhold emotions. So basically, the first one is talking about reacting to our emotional excitement and our sensual feelings, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. And the second one talks about an effort to forcibly restrain ourselves from reacting to any emotional excitement. Both are to be avoided. And what did the Buddha teach then? He taught the middle way. He said there is a middle way. Now, before I explain what I have understood to be the middle way, I would like to point out one very important thing which I find I myself doing it all the time also. We think when we get excited, if we indulge in a little bit of sensual pleasures and at the same time we hold back a little bit of indulgence, a little bit of holding back, that is the middle way. That's what I used to think. Well, no, that is not the middle way. If you indulge in a little bit and then you hold back a little bit, right, thinking that, you do a little bit of bad and then you do a little bit of good, it can balance out. That is not the middle way. That is some kind of a compromise. So what exactly is the middle way? The middle way is the third way. And what is the third way? The third way begins with conscious relaxation and then introspective attention, and that will lead us to a state of mind which is called mental equilibrium. Conscious relaxation is to practice the state of mind where we just allow our mind and our body to stay calm when we see something exciting. We realize something has excited our emotions. Just learn to relax and stay calm. Don't react right away. Allow some time to pass before you actually react to anything that excites you. And the second one, the introspective attention, is to bring the attention in. Sati, or the full practice of this is satipatthana, to observe the four foundations of mindfulness, or what my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, calls it, the four focuses of introspection. Introspection is really a very good word to explain the word satipatthana. Bring your attention inwards and inspect what is going on inside your body and in your mind. That is introspective attention. And the third one is, when you do that, then you are able to cultivate a level of calmness and peace within you. And if you can do that in a consistent and prolonged manner, you actually can bring yourself to a state of mind which is called samadhi. So basically, this is really the middle way. When something out there that you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch excites your emotion, and that is natural. We are human beings. We have 5 senses. These 5 senses will continuously capture stimulations from the environment. And we have a central nervous system that can actually react to it by detecting whether this is a pleasurable experience or an unpleasant experience. That is happening all the time. We can't avoid that. But what we can do when we get excited is to learn to pause, relax, and then introspect. The pausing and the relaxing is this conscious relaxation. When you find yourself getting excited over something, don't react. Just learn to pause, take a deep breath, and just relax. And then only you are ready to respond with a wholesome and kind response. So it is important to learn to relax, and that is called conscious relaxation. And then bring your mind inwards to examine, how is this affecting my body? And when it is affecting my body, that is what you observe, that is kayanupassana. And what is the sensation being aroused in the body? And am I feeling pleasant, uncomfortable? Am I feeling painful, discomfort? So that examining that feeling is Vedanānupassana. And then look at how your emotions are aroused. What are you thinking of? The nature of your thoughts, the nature of your feelings. Are you angry with it? Are you sad about it? Are you feeling fearful? Are you feeling shameful? So these various emotional states, examine the arising of these emotional states, and that's Cittanupassana. And finally, examine how you think about what has happened, how you interpret your circumstances. How do you relate it to your life, past, present, and future? What are your thoughts arising? What are your decisions arising? And that is Dhammanupassana. These are the 4 focuses of your introspection. So that's how you can bring your attention in and examine yourself. All these you can learn by attending Satipatthana meditation retreats. Quite easy to learn these things, to learn to observe these 4 focuses of introspection. And when you're able to do that, you can bring your mind to a level of peace and calm. And with the mind at peace and calm, you are now ready to radiate metta to the world. Because when you are excited and reacting to emotions, you are not ready. And we're going to take a look at metta, not so much from what many of us think, oh, I just sit there and I close my eyes and I say to myself, may I be well and happy. And then may everybody around here be well and happy. And may the rest of the world be well and happy. That is just a matter of chanting. But if you really want to practice metta, you must understand the essence of the Buddha's teaching when he spoke about metta. And this was explained in a couple of sutras, the Karaniya Metta Sutta. And there is also another sutra in Anguttara Nikaya that talks about the benefits, the 11 benefits. So, all these are summarized by the Buddha in a methodology called the Sublime Eightfold Way. These are the 8 stages of cultivation that we can all practice. So that is the Sublime Eightfold Way. Now, if we were quickly to summarize what the Buddha taught in one nutshell, then this Dhammapada verse would be very appropriate. It says, abandon all evil ways, enter the good life, purify one's mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. So the Buddha was actually not teaching some big doctrines from God, God stated this and this is the commandments everyone must follow. No, that's not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha went through it. He was born as a prince. He enjoyed sensual pleasures every day of his life as a prince. Then he renounced and he experienced self-torment and self-mortification as an ascetic. And having experienced these 2 extremes, he found the way. And that's what he was trying to teach us. So in a simple summary, the Buddha was teaching us his experiential reality. What he had experienced as a prince and as an ascetic, and finally becoming awakened, the Buddha. And this is what he was teaching. The Buddha Dhamma is really his experiential reality. He didn't just become a Buddha in one lifetime. He had cultivated over many, many lifetimes, countless lifetimes in his past. Although it is not stated in one single sutra, it was mentioned all over the place. He had perfected the 10 perfections. So these are the 10 perfections called the Dasa Paramiyo. Pardon me if my pronunciation is not very accurate. But these are the 10 perfections. He started with dana, and that is to be generous. So these are the 10 perfections that all of us should aspire to cultivate. Some people might be saying, wow, in this lifetime, is it so easy to become enlightened? Of course not. Because the Buddha took thousands of lifetimes to become enlightened. And in the course of these thousands of lifetimes, he had perfected these 10 perfections. So our aspiration, instead of thinking, oh, we're going to be enlightened this lifetime, or we try to be enlightened this lifetime, bring it down to earth, be realistic. Let's learn about these 10 perfections and try to cultivate them and begin from there. The next one is sila, talking about virtuous moral conduct. And the next one is about renunciation, giving up worldly pleasures. And then the next one is cultivating insight, panya. And then the next one is having this willpower and energy to strive on and to cultivate with full diligence. That is virya. And then there is this patience and tolerance and endurance and acceptance of things that are happening around us, which is anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And that is kanti. And then there is satya, to be honest and truthful in our speech and in our thoughts and in our action. And then there is the determination, never give up. Right? Pardon me if I can't pronounce that, but never giving up. Finally, the last two is actually a compressed summary of the Brahma Vihara, beginning with metta and then completing it with upekkha. So it is these last two we're going to look at. In fact, in the course of my forthcoming sharing, I'm very happy. I must thank Sister Lily and also Brother Chim for arranging that I will be back for roughly 6 occasions in 2017. So I hope to continue this sharing, right, starting with metta today, and we will move on to karuna and mudita and upekkha subsequently. So today's sharing is about metta, and this is really part of this 4 Brahma Viharas, the Chattari Brahma Vihara. And there is also another description of these 4 called the 4 immeasurables. Now, cultivation of these 4 Brahma Viharas can lead us to be reborn in a higher realm, the Brahma realm. This is basically made of the four divine dwellings. That's why it's called the Brahma Vihara. Metta, which is often translated as loving kindness and benevolence. Metta actually has quite a number of translations. There's a translation that deals with friendliness, friendship, mitra. So that is friendship, friendliness. There's also another one that deals with benevolence, the kind-heartedness of wanting to help other people. So there are many, basically they are all centered around the importance of being kind and loving towards our fellow beings. And fellow beings are not necessarily human beings, also all beings. And you will learn later on when I share with you the more detail about the Metta Sutra. It is Buddha's explanation about being benevolent towards all beings with no exceptions. And then, of course, we practice the part that is compassion. Compassion is really a deeper form of metta in the sense that it is the actual practice, the sacrifices, the work that you do, the willingness to give up what you have in order to help other people to become free from suffering, to become peaceful and comfortable. So that is karuna, and then you will find joy in that, and that is mudita. And with that, it leads you to a state of mental equilibrium, and that is upekkha, which is often translated as equanimity, but mental equilibrium is another translation which my teacher offers, Bhante Punaji. Basically, he says it is a state of mental peace, so peaceful, so blissful, that you really don't want to go anywhere else. You want to stay there, and that is upekkha. So let's take a look at the Metta Sutra. There are 2 sets of Metta Sutra. The first one is called the Karaniya Metta Sutra. Basically, this is 2 sutras which are identical. One is found in the Sutta Nipata 1.8. The other one is found in the Kudaka Pata. Right? Both are talking about the same thing. There are 10 verses which is commonly chanted, and these are 10 verses that talks about the virtuous qualities of a person who practices metta, and also the development and the cultivation, the meditative development and cultivation in the practice of metta. The other sutra is actually the Metta Nimisamsa Sutra. And this is talking about the 11 benefits. This is found in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of 11. This is about the benefits of the practice of metta. We will take a look at both. I won't go into the sutra in great detail, but I will look at all the 10 verses, and I will share with you some of the learning I have received from other teachers as well in explaining to me, including Venerable Dr. Punaji, as well as quite a number of other, there was a visiting monk by the name of Pemaratana from US, and he also explained to me this Metta Sutra in great detail. So I'll share with you what I have learned. Now, I think you can find this translation, very similar translation in several books, so there's no need to clarify in detail what translation there is. But what I'd like to share with you is some of the additional points that I picked up. In the verse 1, 2, and 3 basically talks about what kind of people should practice metta. That means it's talking about the conditions that lead you to practice metta. What should you be like before you even think about practicing metta? It's very important that you program yourself, you condition yourself into this. Basically, he says it's one who is skilled in doing good, who wishes to attain the state of perfect calm, should act thus. And we should be able to be virtuous, perfectly upright, obedient, gentle, and humble. Basically, the first paragraph talks about the aspiration, and the second paragraph talks about the requirements. So some of the notes that I've picked up is basically, the first part is talking about skillful in knowing and discerning good from evil. That's really what that first part is about, to be able to recognize good from evil, wholesome from unwholesome. And we must be capable, which means we have the ability and the confidence of good and wholesome deeds. That means we should be confident that doing good is really what we really want to do. So in other words, we must have that confidence in us that goodness is what we are pursuing. And then the 6 qualities are able, means you have the physical, the mental, and the emotional capacity to be able to practice metta. Able, ability. And then you should think in virtuous terms, virtuous and moral. Discipline. The word obedient there is actually discipline. That means we want to discipline ourselves. That we will now follow the precepts. We will follow what we learn. We will live in the Buddha Dhamma. Right? And important is then to be kind and humble. Kindness and humbleness. Which means when we practice metta, we should be humble about it. Right? So this is the first verse. The first 3 verses basically describes the condition within which we begin to practice metta. Verse number 2 is commonly translated as contented, easily looked after, not a burden to others, with few duties, simple in livelihood, controlled in senses, discreet, not impudent, not greedily attached to families. Now, bear in mind that the majority of Buddha's disciples are all monks. So in stating this, in a way, the Buddha was addressing to monks. So therefore, this last part about attachment to family is also very important. But it also applies to lay people, not necessarily only to monks. So in a nutshell, the additional notes that I got was that we should be free from desires. We should be easily supported. Easily supported means you are not a burden to other people. That you are a person who is able to move around relatively freely. And if you need a walking stick, fine, use a walking stick. If you need a walker, then use a walker. But at least you're able to move around and not require people to carry you around. So you have that ability to do that. And you are easily supported. Don't become a burden to other people. And don't create other people to have obligations towards you. And don't create a situation where you are having obligations towards other people. Keep your lifestyle simple. Living a simple life. These are some of the important requirements to begin practicing metta. And then not seeking excitement, this emotional excitement that causes us to react. And you're not an annoying personality. This is very important. Control in senses discreet and not impudent. That means you are not an annoying personality, right? And that you are not a trouble. You have no troublesome habits, right? Making other people feel uncomfortable having you around. You're noisy, you speak loudly, you use harsh words, that kind of thing. So this is a very important condition also. Finally, non-clinging to family. We're not saying that you should detach from your family. No, that's not what that is meant by that last part. It simply means, notice the translation there, not greedily attached to family. The word greedily, right? So that means you're not really clinging on in a manner of lust and greed. Not clinging to family or household life. Attaching yourself strongly to household life. And more importantly, when you're interacting with your family members, especially if you are the head of the family interacting with your children and grandchildren, non-controlling or dominating over family members. Right? So these are important personality traits that we must cultivate, and that will shape our character. Verse number 3, also supporting the conditions necessary to practice metta, would be, he should not commit any wrongdoing so that wise people do not find fault in him. And have the aspiration, may all beings be happy and safe, and may their hearts be wholesome. So basically, you practice virtuous and moral character. You're morally upright and virtuous. You're free from ill will, and whatever you do is ethical in accordance with the ethics of the society. Most importantly, every thought, every speech, and every action is wholesome, blameless, resourceful, and exemplary. Wholesome means whatever you say or do does not carry any kind of ill will or bad intentions of any sort. Blameless means everything you say or do does not end up hurting other people in one way or another. And that might even include, you know something to be true and it is not necessary to say it, then don't say it, because sometimes telling people certain truths can hurt people. So this is why one has to practice blamelessness. That everything you do, even though it may be honest, but it does not lead to other people feeling hurt or harming other people in one way or another, even if you had good intentions. So in other words, good intentions with wisdom. Very often, good intentions without wisdom may cause harm to others. I can quote you a very simple example. I made that mistake myself, but I realized the mistake. Many, many years ago, before I was involved with my present teacher or the Theravadan tradition, I was with another tradition where they do a lot of bird release. And we go to the bird shop and buy birds. And then bring it home and buy 108 birds and then bring it to our garden or park and then release the birds. And what happened? When I bought those birds with good intention of bird release, by the time I brought home, I found 3 or 4 inside that big cage. They are near death. And by the time I opened the cage to release the 108 birds, there are about 5 or 6 that had literally died from all the trampling inside. So this bird release practice, you can do it with wisdom. But unfortunately, because birds is not something that I would encourage people to use for release. There could be other species that might be better to be released, but birds is not one of them. So buying birds from a bird shop and then releasing it, that actually is, I find, not to have wisdom. Because I end up causing hurt to the birds. I end up causing some birds to die, even though I had good intentions. So that is an example of not being blameless. Right? And then resourceful. Resourceful means when you cultivate and develop it, it leads to goodness and happiness and peace. Basically, resourcefulness means the things that you practice can lead to goodness and happiness. Exemplary means the wise people look at you and say, this is something to be praised and practiced. In fact, these 4 conditions are very clearly stated in the Kalama Sutta. I took this from the Kalama Sutta. Where the Kalama Sutra, a lot of people focus on the wrong thing. They focus on those 10 things we shouldn't do or we should avoid. And that is, don't believe just because he's a famous person. Don't believe just because it's written in the books. Don't believe because of this, because of that. And there are these 10 things, don't believe. But a lot of people miss that later part in the Kalama Sutra where the Buddha said, there are 4 conditions you can use to apply, to choose whether something should be believed and practiced or not. And these are the 4: that it is wholesome, free from ill will; that it is blameless, that it doesn't cause any harm or hurt to anyone; that when it is cultivated and developed, it leads to goodness, and that is resourcefulness; and finally, it is praised and practiced by the wise. And this is very useful. I find to be very useful guideline for me. If you really want to practice metta, keep in mind these 4 conditions, everything you say or do, because then it will lead you to kindness with wisdom. And that's really very important part. And then precondition to wishing others well. So it is a necessary condition to lead you to wish others well. And the 4th verse basically talks about what whosoever living beings they are. That means what kind of beings that we should radiate metta to. Whosoever living beings they are. Feeble or strong, long or stout, short, small. These are all talking about different size and shape of the beings. That means Buddha was not only talking about human beings. He was talking about all kinds of beings. Right? And this is really to who you should radiate metta, to who you should practice metta to. Now the scope of your metta, to aspire loving kindness towards. And beings moving or immobile. It means there are some beings that are not moving, they stay put. And there are some beings that are roaming around, flying over the sky. All sizes and shapes. They come in all sizes and shapes. They could be long and short. What is a long being? A snake, a lizard. That is a long being. Right? Then there are big beings like elephants. And there are little beings like ants and mosquitoes. And then verse number 5 is also describing the kind of beings. Seen or unseen, those dwelling far or near, those who are born and those who are to be born, and may all beings without exception be happy-minded. Now, seen and unseen, a lot of people thought, well, there are many different interpretations. Some people say seen or unseen is referring to beings in the higher realm. But actually there are 3 different conditions that refer to that kind of seen or unseen beings. The first one, people who are around you that you can visibly see, or people who are far away in another country that you don't see. That's really one way of interpreting seen or unseen. But a second interpretation of seen or unseen are people you know, your neighbors. You know them. So you run into them very frequently. So that is known to you. But also people you don't know. Maybe they are relatives that you don't come across. You don't meet them, you don't know them. So seen or unseen could also be people you know, as well as people you do not personally know. And then the third one, of course, talking about those who are existing in our realm, as well as the higher realm, the beings in the higher realm, the devas and so on. So there are really 3 ways of interpreting seen or unseen. There is no need to choose which one. All 3 apply. So we just have to realize that this seen or unseen is referring to all 3. And born, and in the process of being born. In the process of being born could be fetus, could even be fertilized eggs. A fertilized egg itself is a being that is being born, to be born, right? And then verse 6 then basically talks about how you should radiate to them. Let not one deceive another, nor despise any, so there is no ego involved. Person whatsoever, in any place, in anger or ill will, let him not wish any harm to another. And this actually includes wishing wellness and kindness and loving kindness to people who hate you, people who are angry with you, people who consider you as an enemy. So basically, it is about the breadth of the reach of your metta. and aspire others to practice this loving kindness. And this is really the extension of the aspiration going beyond. That means even to your enemy, you wish they will radiate metta as well. So basically, it's also talking about extending it to the people who hate you, who are angry with you. You also should radiate metta to them. And verse 7 is very important, talking about the depth of metta. And the Buddha used an excellent example here. Now, if you talk about a person who feels love for another person, which is the greatest example we can use about someone expressing loving kindness to another person? The greatest example is a mother and her only child. A mother is with her only child. I think all the mothers here would be able to identify with that. A mother would do anything for her child, especially if it's the only child. So this is the example that the Buddha used, that we should radiate metta as though we are the mother and we have the only child and we really wish that child to be well. So that is what the Buddha used as an example. Just as a mother would protect her only child at the risk of her own life, that means she's willing to sacrifice her life for the wellness of her child, even so, let him cultivate a boundless heart, no restriction, right, towards all beings, no discrimination. So what this really means is the depth or intensity of loving kindness, that the mother and her only child as the depth or intensity of loving kindness, unconditional love, non-discriminating, right? So basically what verse 7 does is that we don't discriminate. Right? We treat this expression of loving kindness as though it's a mother taking care of her only child. And verse number 8 is talking about some of the benefits. So let thoughts of boundless love pervade the whole world. So the whole world can benefit from radiating loving kindness above, below, and across. So it's talking about the benefit being spread in all directions, everywhere, right? And without any obstruction, without any hatred, without any enmity, not feeling anger or any bad feeling towards people who have hurt us in some ways. So it's about the direction of radiating metta throughout and across the entire world, boundlessly, no discrimination towards race, religion, or sex, or whatever that separates us and that classifies us. So no discrimination, no exception, flowing freely, and incorporating those who hate or despise us. This last part is very important. You know, some people will say, oh, I will express loving kindness to all the people I know. But you know, these people who don't like me, they belong to this other religion that condemn our religion. We should not express loving kindness to them. That is not the essence of loving kindness, right? They could be red shirts. They could be people who are practicing a lot of ill will. It doesn't matter. Radiate loving kindness whenever you can, whoever you can. And verse number 9 talks about your posture. So it says, whether you stand or walk, there are 4 postures: standing, walking, sitting, and lying down. In whatever posture. That means it's basically talking about radiating metta 24/7. No exception. Whether you are doing some work, whether you are sitting there resting, or you're lying down getting ready to sleep for the evening, then there are no exceptions, 24/7, every minute of the day. As long as you are awake, of course, this means not when you are in deep sleep. And you should develop this mindfulness. And this is really a kind of mindfulness, the introspective attention, to be aware that now you want to radiate this metta from within you 24/7. And this, they say, is the highest conduct here. So basically, it's all postures and during all kinds of activity, mindfully recalling at every moment without exception except in deep sleep, because when you're in deep sleep, you have no awareness of your environment, and as though living in the Brahma realm. So basically you practice as though, this is an interesting thing, as though it is heaven on earth. Very importantly, that means basically we practice as though this is heaven on earth. That we are not thinking, oh, this is suffering, I can't radiate loving kindness and so on. Right? And finally, the last verse is talking about the ultimate in our practice of virtues. Now, there are some very interesting words here. It says, not falling into error, virtuous and endowed with insight, he discards attachment to sensuous desires. Truly, he does not come again to be conceived in a womb. So a few interesting things to look at. The word dittin actually comes from samaditi, the view, right view. So here, it's referring to views and beliefs. That means we don't allow our beliefs and our views to prevent us. That means we don't cling on to beliefs, views, or dogmas. So that's the first verse. First part here with the word dittin. This is referring to a very existential thinking. Oh, I know, I believe in this, I cling on to this. This is a very existential thinking. The one that turns it around is the next verse, dasana. So basically this is really talking about an experiential thinking. To look at the experience, our interaction with one another. How things come to be, understanding the anicca, right? And instead of looking at existence. Now this practice of understanding how things come to be, anicca, dukkha, anatta, this is really the practice of vipassana. So what this verse is really trying to say is that you are constantly practicing vipassana 24/7. Because the word dasana is often interchangeable with vipassana. Dasana is to look at things, how things come to be. Right? And this is mentioned throughout many sutras, that dasana is really to understand anicca, dukkha, anatta. And not falling into error. And this is an important statement, is right. It basically means you do not cling on to views that lead you to make mistakes, that lead you to misunderstand things or people. Right? This will allow you to be able to see clearly what is ahead and what you can do about it, to have the vision and the aspiration to spread this metta. And help yourself to break away from this indulgence in sensual pleasures, indulgence in desires, and this indulgence is in existential thinking. And by doing so, this last part, he does not come again to be conceived in a womb. Now, there is two interpretations on this. First one could mean that you will not be reborn in the human realm. Because conceived in a womb means you are born in a human realm, our sensual realm. You could be reborn in a higher realm. So that first interpretation could mean that by practicing metta, it will lead you to be reborn in a higher realm. The other interpretation is that you will not be reborn again, which means you basically attain nibbana. So there are two interpretations. We're not saying you should take one or the other, but basically realize that either one is good for you, isn't it? Whether you are not going to be reborn again, which means congratulations, you have become an arahant. Or you will be reborn in a higher realm, in the Brahma realm, where everything is peaceful and blissful. You're no longer subject to the sensual conditions that we are all facing. Right? So these are the two interpretations. So these are the 10 verses that prepares you to practice metta. So I hope this sharing of these 10 verses has helped us understand more clearly, in a deeper way, what is really metta and how we should prepare ourselves to practice metta. And not just think by sitting there saying, may all beings be well and happy, and that's it. There are so many things we have to do beforehand and in the whole process as well. And if we do that, we will bring benefits. And what are the benefits? And this is mentioned in the other sutra, in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of 11, Metta Nisamsa Sutta. Basically, the Buddha pointed out that if metta was to be pursued, developed, and cultivated, it would lead to great benefits. 11 of them. Pursuit. Pursuit means we have an aspiration, we have a goal. The goal is metta. So pursuing it, wanting to do the good things, wanting to practice loving kindness. That is pursuing it. Develop means we begin to do the right things, to do the things that cultivate this practice of loving kindness. And finally, when it is cultivated, we then see the fruits blossoming. That is cultivated. So pursuit, developed, and cultivated. The aspiration, the actual practice, and the fruits of the practice. And what are the 11? One sleeps well, which means you will have a peaceful sleep. One awakens happily. And when you wake up, you feel good about having rested well. One does not have bad dreams in the process of your sleep. You don't end up dreaming terrible things. One is pleasing to human beings, which means it actually makes you a pleasant person that other people like and see you as an example. You become an exemplary personality around the people you are with. And one is pleasing to the spirits. Even the devas want to come to you. It's very important that if you're able to do that, you are actually attracting the beings in the higher realms to want to surround you. Beings in the higher realms will only come to good people. They don't surround the evil people. People who do good, you have the potential to attract the attention of beings in the higher realm. And that is actually a very good thing. We have heard many good stories about people being influenced by devas. And the devas can't change your life in the sense that he can't make you more comfortable, can't make you more healthy. But they can plant thoughts in your mind to help you, help yourself. And deities protect one. And that's really what it is. And this is actually mentioned. Right? It is in the sutra. The Buddha has taught it that if we do good, the beings in the higher realms will come to us. The beings in the higher realm will protect us. And this is very clearly stated. Right? This is not pure superstition. This is mentioned in the sutra. And we will not die terrible death, dying in fire, dying of poison, dying of weapons, right? Or being hurt by these. And our mind will quickly become tranquil. The word there is actually samadhi. And unfortunately, samadhi is often translated as concentration or concentrated. But what is really happening is that it's a mental equilibrium. The mind becomes peaceful and calm and blissful. Cultivating the mind to a state where we feel the joy, the happiness of kindness. And that is called mudita. Right? So metta leads to mudita. And one's facial complexion is serene. That means you will look peaceful, and you will feel good about yourself. Usually it means you carry a perpetual smile in your face. Kind people are always smiling. You don't see kind people with a big bad frown around you. Look around. All the kind people that you know who are kind, you can see they have a very peaceful face. Right? And on the contrary, those people who are always frowning, well, I don't know, maybe they need to improve their metta, right? The level of metta. And finally, one dies unconfused. That means at the time of your death, your mind is peaceful. And when your mind is peaceful in your last moment, you will be reborn in a more peaceful and better condition. It could mean that when you are reborn as a human being, you would be reborn in a better family. You will not be reborn in a place of suffering, in a war-torn country, right? So you will be reborn in a better family. You could also be reborn in a higher realm. When your mind is peaceful and undiluted at the time of death. And finally, one does not, if one does not penetrate further, which means if one does not attain Nibbana, one has the potential to become reborn in the higher realm, in the Brahma realm. Very specifically mentioned about the Brahma realm. So in other words, if you have practice metta to that extent and you are not yet enlightened, it doesn't matter. You will be reborn in a higher realm, in a more happier and more peaceful condition, more peaceful family even. So this is basically the benefits. So I will finish off with this summary, reminder to abandon all evil ways, to enter the good life, purify one's mind, and this is the teaching of all the Buddhas. I just want to very quickly point out the first two parts, abandon all evil ways and enter the good life. Some of you may have seen a different translation. Abandon all evil ways. Very often some of you may have come across a translation called avoid evil or avoid all evil. I think this is a very common translation. Now my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, pointed out to me that real sentence there is not about avoiding evil, because sometimes through the course of our life, we have developed certain taints or certain defilements. And they arise. Therefore, they can't be easily avoided. In other words, when these defilements arise, we can't avoid them, so to speak. But what we can do is that when we realize, when we have the wisdom to see it happening, then we have the wisdom to let it go, not allow it to disturb us. That means when suddenly we feel angry towards someone, we can't avoid feeling angry towards someone who has done something terrible to us in the spur of the moment. But what we can do is when that anger arises, we can abandon it and say, never mind, I let it go. So this is why abandon evil ways is more precise than avoiding evil. We can't always avoid these defilements arising. The second one, enter the good life. Often you come across a translation called do good. Right? So avoid evil, do good. Purify your mind. So the second one, do good. Now doing good is an effort. That's good. You can do good. But what my teacher mentioned is the Buddha really meant for you to live a good life. This is why enter the good life. It's not just about that effort now and again. It's not about doing good from time to time, once in a while. It's actually about living a good life, living the Dhamma. Dhamma is not something you learn in your mind. It's not an intellectual learning. Dhamma is a way to live your life. So it's really about entering the good life, living a life of goodness. And if people are suffering, if people need your help and there is some way you can go and do something, or you can give them something or help them in one way or another, that is wonderful. But sometimes certain things happening elsewhere, we don't have either the resources or the opportunity, or for whatever reason, we feel something about it. So the least you can practice is simply radiating metta. And that means that if you see hatred, radiate love. If you see resentment, send forgiveness. If you see weakness, send strength. If you see chaos in another place, send tranquility. Radiate that feeling of tranquility. Hostility, you radiate peace. When you see fear, you send courage. When you see despair, you send hope. When you see pain, you send comfort. When you see cruelty, you send kindness. And finally, when you see suffering, you send compassion. May suffering ones be suffering free. May the fear-struck fearless be. May grieving ones shed all grief. May all beings find peace and relief. And it is through this, at least, will help us bring more joy in the world through loving kindness. Thank you very much for your attention.